There could be some massive changes coming to the BC real estate market, and I'm in favor of a bunch of these ideas. The cost to rent a home in Canada continues to skyrocket, as does demand. And the Stats Canada report out says that nearly 1.5 million Canadians live in inadequate, unsuitable, and unaffordable homes. I don't like hearing that. It's September 30th. My name is Matthew Pfeiffer. That was Matilda sitting there. There's a whole bunch that's been going on this week in the Canadian real estate news. So here is your weekly Canadian real estate news recap here on Prairie Real Estate. But as always, let's start off with another terrible joke. Why are Teslas so expensive? Because they charge a lot. If you have a terrible joke I can use in a future episode, put it in the comments below. If you love learning about Canadian real estate or keeping up to date on the Canadian real estate market, hit that subscribe button. Let's get into the news. And as always, the links to these articles will be in the description below. Starting off at the top here, information here from rentals.ca where they track the price of rent. Once again, it continues to be on the rise. We're up 11% year over year, and we're up over 20% from the lows we saw in 2020. Demand for rentals is also up 40%. This is crazy what's going on. That's why we're seeing bidding wars. Yeah, bidding wars for rental properties. Even some places that have offer dates to put in what you're wanting to rent for the place. This is crazy. This type of stuff we were talking about just 6 months ago in the home buyer market, how crazy things have gotten. That's transferred over to the rental market. A lot of Canadians have put the decision to buy on hold and of course now jumped in and rented something instead. We're going to be talking about that in a couple of articles here. Vancouver once again tops the list, the most expensive place in Canada to rent a home. A one-bedroom property in Vancouver, over $2,600 a month. Next report I want to talk about here is from Stats Canada. A ton of stuff that I've been talking about this week, last week, and I'll probably talk about next week because Stats Canada has a whole bunch of information they just released on housing data in Canada. And one thing they tracked was the significant growth in population for smaller communities, mainly due to the affordability offered in those smaller communities around the larger centers of Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, etc. And we saw this, of course, in the last 18 months, 2 years, huge demand for properties in those suburban markets and a huge spike in prices. Now, I'm not sure how long this desire to move to smaller communities is going to last because we're already seeing that the resale market in Toronto and Vancouver, for example, well, inside the core of those cities, the resale market stayed fairly strong, whereas the suburban communities, those are hitting the hardest with dropping sales demand and prices. So we'll have to wait and see if this trend of people migrating to more affordable communities is a long-term thing or if it was a temporary shift. But speaking along those lines, the province of Alberta is trying to lure people away from places like Toronto with an ad campaign promoting how much more affordable housing is in Alberta than it is in, say, Toronto, where the average price is well over $1 million. And in Edmonton, it's about $400,000 or $500,000 and about $600,000 to $700,000 to buy a house in those two respective cities. Obviously, much more affordable, and Alberta's looking to cash in on that and encourage people to move from Toronto, Vancouver, etc. into Alberta, where they feel that because housing is much more affordable, that will be attractive to a lot of Canadians. And if you are one of those Canadians that is thinking about buying, whether it's in Alberta or anywhere in Canada, I can help you find a fantastic realtor. I'll put a link to my calendar in the description below. You can book me for an appointment. I'll give you a call and we will find the best realtor for you. Next article here is a report from the OECD. It's in the Financial Post in this case here, talking that the Bank of Canada is going to have to raise its overnight lending rate to 4.5% by 2023 to tame inflation. Right now, time recording, 3.25%, meaning you're gonna have to see the Bank of Canada raise rates another 1.25% to get to that number that the OECD is projecting. Right now, projecting when the heck the Bank of Canada is going to stop raising rates and how high they're going to go, well, that's kind of a guessing game. Nobody knows where the heck rates are going to go. Everybody's just making educated guesses at this point. Wouldn't surprise me to see the Bank of Canada continue to raise rates, and we very well could get to that point. Really, at this point, only time will tell. Okay, next article, again from the Financial Post. I like my Financial Post, so I get a lot of my news from there. And pretty much every news outlet does these articles at least once a year, and it is, how much money do you need to make to buy a house in this respective city or these cities in Canada? They're really entertaining. They make great headlines saying you have to make $2 million to buy a house in Toronto or something crazy like that. But really, it's not an accurate representation of what actually happens when somebody goes to buy a house in those markets. First-time home buyers, obviously, they're going to make far less money when they're going to be buying a much smaller, less expensive property. Whereas somebody who's buying their second or their third home, well, they're going to take the equity out of the house that they currently live in right now, and they're going to be using that as a down payment for that larger house. So really, these how much money do you need to make to buy a house articles, they're just for entertainment. They did note in this article, though, that because of the drop in home prices in a lot of markets, that you actually had to make less money, in this case about $12,000 less per year, to be able to afford these houses. So it's entertaining to read, but that's how it should be taken, entertainment. ReMax is out with another updated forecast for the Canadian real estate market. I swear I could probably do one of these weekly recaps each and every single week with XYZ company or economist or bank is forecasting XYZ for the Canadian real estate market. It seems like that's how fast these things come out because they're always being updated, especially with how quick the market is changing right now. Well, ReMax is out saying that prices are going to decline this fall by about 2%. Yeah, duh, I think that was pretty obvious. That's the trend that we've been going for a while now. Vancouver, they're expecting prices coming down 3%, 6% in the GTA. Winnipeg, this was the odd one out, 8% decline. That kind of surprised me. We'll have to wait and see. And then Calgary, Edmonton, St. John's, and a few other cities across Canada, they're expecting prices to increase. Now, in my monthly market update that I do, which if you haven't subscribed, you should because I do this each and every single month, lots of great information there. I talked about how there were some interesting trends starting to shape up that we may be starting to see things shift from that downward to maybe flattening out. Again, we'll have to wait and see. I'll have updated information here in about a week on the Canadian real estate market and where things are going. Next news article, again, from ReMax. They commissioned a survey to ask people what they thought about whether they were going to buy and sell, put their decisions on hold, or whether they're going ahead. Probably shocking to pretty much nobody. 44% of respondents that were thinking about buying a house have put those plans on hold. This is something I've talked about for a while. With how much market uncertainty right now, there is a ton of buyers that have said, hold up, I am going to sit on the sidelines here for a little bit, wait till things stabilize, and then I'll reevaluate my decision whether I'm going to buy or not. That's part of what's driving that huge surge in rental demand. These buyers have said, I'm going to rent here for 6 months or a year and wait things out. And as I've been saying for quite a while now, once we do see some stability in the market, I fully expect these buyers, when they've gone and looked at it and go, yeah, okay, I think it's time for me to buy now. And that's when we'll see a pickup in activity for the real estate market in Canada, where buyers have got confidence now and they'll come back to the market. We'll see sales probably start to increase at that point. If you made it to this point, thanks for sticking around, and subscribe if you haven't already, and maybe give me a like on this video. Let's talk about David Eby's housing plan. If you don't know who that is one of the candidates running to be the leader of the provincial NDP party in BC and likely going to be the next premier of BC. David Eby just released his housing plan. Should he become the premier of BC? And I'm gonna have to check my notes here because I can't memorize all this, but I think there's some really good ideas here. First off, legalize secondary suites across BC. So that means if you have a garage, you want to put a suite above it, or just put a suite in your backyard off your alley. You can do that now. Right now, there are some places in BC you can, but most places you can't. Fantastic. This will give homeowners the ability to put a suite on their property. Selection, more housing is going to be always better in my mind. Next up here, developers will be able to go into single family neighborhoods. They could potentially even bulldoze a house and put up to 3 units on that property, regardless of what the municipal zoning bylaws say. Again, they're going to basically completely override municipal zoning bylaws and allow developers to do this. This is fantastic. Point number 3 is that they're going to remove the restrictions that condo boards often currently put in place, limiting the number of rentals allowed in a project. They're just going to say, nope, sorry, condo board, you can no longer put those restrictions in place any longer. They're going to have a flipping tax for any property that is sold within 2 years of that purchase. Again, they don't really outline the details on this, so we'll have to go more depth on that when they have more details on that. They're going to fast track the approval process for multifamily building construction. Awesome. We need to get stuff built faster in Canada. Right now, we're just not doing that. And then the last one is they're going to set aside about $500 million to buy existing rental properties in BC. I'm assuming here to fix these up and provide these for low-income families at below market rate. Last one here. This one came from that big scary headline. Canadian real estate is unsuitable, inadequate, and unaffordable for 1.5 million Canadians. This report from Stats Canada talking about basically the inadequacy and the unaffordability of Canadian real estate. Many families are living in homes that just simply aren't big enough for them, or they can't afford to buy a house in their neighborhood. They had, for example, 800,000 Canadians live in a house that's not big enough for their family. This is something I've talked about for a while. We don't have enough housing in Canada, and we definitely don't have enough affordable housing. We need, as a country, to address this problem. So get on your political leaders, municipal, provincial, federal. It has to be something that's top of mind for all politicians. This is a problem that has to be addressed, because if we don't, Canadian real estate, whether it's you're renting or you're buying, is going to continue to become more and more unaffordable. And that's not something anybody wants. I know a lot of people like to say how I always want prices to go up. No, I don't. I want more and more people to have the ability to buy houses if that's what they want. And if you're renting, it's affordable for you. That's a wrap for this week's Canadian real estate news. Depending how fast I can get the video shot and edited, the next video you might see from me will be the October Canadian housing market update. If it's already done by the time you watch this, I'll put it up here. If not, that'll be the September update. As always, thanks very much for watching, guys.